the bodies were then discovered. The cause of death was an unknown compelling force in which the hikers were forced to overcome. And her mum, her brother, and her brother's friend unalived brutally in the house. Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to be looking at the 3 most disturbing unsolved mysteries in history, basically. What I can guarantee is that you haven't heard everything about these cases. Some of it extremely disturbing. If you're new here, make sure you smash that subscribe button, hit that bell so you never miss a video. Without further ado, let's get in to the video. In late January of 1959, 9 experienced hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, embarked on a rural skiing mission in Soviet Russia. The destination was Otteron Mountain, and of course, none of the hikers returned. So, first of all, it's very important to note that these people were extremely experienced hikers. They weren't just like a random group of people who decided to climb up a mountain. They were extremely experienced. Now, they went on this expedition thinking it was just a normal trip like all of the other ones they'd probably been on hundreds of times before. But at some point during that trip, something happened that still to this day is completely unexplainable. So, they vanished after February the 12th. So they were meant to send a telegram on this day to basically alert people back home that they were okay or where they were, but of course they didn't. On February the 26th, a rescue operation was launched to the region and a huge manhunt took place. This is when the rescue teams found something. First of all, they discovered their abandoned tents on the slopes of this mountain, just completely abandoned there. Then they also noticed that the tents were cut open, but from the inside, like someone had just slashed all around the tent, but literally from the inside. But in the tent was still the group's belongings and footwear, almost folded nicely still, which led people to believe that they had to escape very, very quickly, leaving everything behind. But still, why the slashes in the tent from the inside? Now, a while later, around a mile away, the bodies were then discovered. 5 of the hikers were found within 1 mile of the tent. They were wearing basically no clothing and didn't really have any injuries at all, which led people to believe that this group had just frozen to death. But it wasn't then until May, quite some time later, when the other hikers were discovered. A couple of them found in a ravine with much more brutal injuries. 2 of the guys had huge chest fractures, and one of them, this is one of the most disturbing parts, was missing her tongue, her eyes, and part of her lips. Around the area as well was a very tall tree which had signs that it had been climbed, basically, lots of branches broken off. Now, upon further look on some of the hikers that went missing in this ravine area, they had skull fractures, broken ribs, pretty major injuries. But compared to the other ones found closer to the tent who had basically nothing but were also naked, the researchers conducted some pretty groundbreaking results. So they said that these injuries would have happened while they were alive, like this didn't happen after death. So the person who lost their eyes and their tongue, what the hell happened? One of them even having a completely snapped neck and deformed body. Now, this is the most unexplainable part, because there is a lot of theories about this whole thing. The most common one is they got caught in an avalanche. This would explain why they had to slash out of the tent. Maybe the snow got too high. It was powerful, so they all got scattered in different areas. Some of the guys might have not been fully clothed and just went outside and bang. Doesn't really explain how you would lose your eyes and your tongue, but you could be hit with something. I don't know, I'm playing devil's advocate here. But what isn't explainable at all, and what researchers have said is completely baffling still to this day, many articles of clothing found near the ravine and where this tree was located were later deemed extremely radioactive. Why would it be radioactive on the side of a flipping mountain? After a few months of this case surfacing, it went completely cold, and it was dismissed with cryptic conclusion. The cause of death was an unknown compelling force in which the hikers were forced to overcome. I don't know what that means, but it does not sound good. But the questions still remain. Why did the hikers leave the tent? Why was it slashed from the inside? How did they sustain these injuries? And why were those bits of clothing radioactive? The hell happened? If you're still watching this video, guys, and you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Make sure you hit that button right now and turn on post notifications. Finally, this one, if any of you guys have seen the movie The Strangers, this is actually what the film is based on. This story is crazy, and I genuinely can't believe this is still unsolved. Like, what actually happened? In the heart of California's Sierra Nevada mountains, there is a small, very quiet town called KEEDIE. On an April morning in 1981, though Sue Sharp, who had 5 kids and was in an abusive relationship, she took her 5 kids, got away from the ex-husband, and went down to this cabin area. Things were great. For the first year of moving here, they were all happy. But April 12th, 1981, everything would change. The night before, her teenage daughter Sheila had gone to stay at a friend's house just down the road. Now, it was literally like 2 houses away. It wasn't far from the family home. She'd stayed there till she returned home on April the 11th, early morning, to quite a shock. All of the kids were in this house the night before, one of the boys had also had one of his friends round from over the road as well. Now, when Sheila returned home that morning, she found her mum, her brother, and her brother's friend unalived brutally in the house. And her younger sister was missing but not in the house. Now, there wasn't any signs of forced entry into the house. Now, the victims were bludgeoned, there was multiple weapons on the floor, and there was medical tape there. Like, it is completely brutal what happened, even though it is completely unknown still. Now, this is where it is genuinely just crazy. So, of course, the mum, the brother, and the brother's friend were unalive, but her two other boys were alive, completely unharmed, in the bedroom, where Sheila was now waiting as well, with the other girl missing. Now, the two young boys were too young to be questioned. They weren't even a suspect, and neither was Sheila. Some witnesses a few weeks later then came forward and said they had actually seen Tina, who was the other young girl, getting taken away by a man late in the night, and years later in 1984, her skull and other bones were discovered about 62 miles away from this camp, in Camp 18, which was near Feather Falls. Now, the case went cold pretty quickly, but was renewed back in 2013 when more investigations started happening. Now, one main thing people think is that it could have been the ex-husband who was angry that the mother had taken away his kids, had unalived his wife, his eldest son, and his friend, and left the young ones alive, and potentially even taken the young daughter as well. But then what happened to her? We don't know the full story of what happened between her and her ex-husband. We don't know how bad this relationship really was, so we'll never really know the full truth there. Chris Kremers, who was 21 years old, and her friend Lizanne Froon, who was 22, were adventurous and spirited. They'd constantly go out hiking and go on these crazy trips, camping in the wilderness. Now, in March 2014, they travelled from the Netherlands to Panama for one of their biggest expeditions to date. On April 1st, 2014, Chris and Lizanne set off on a hike on El Piansta Trail, a scenic and actually very popular route among travellers and the locals here. But the next day, the women failed to meet their tour guide who they were supposed to be meeting up with. This is when concerns started to arise. Their host family, where they were staying, reported them missing on April 2nd, and the search began with the local authorities, aided as well by the Dutch authorities. And they even had aerial support all around. Like, this was a big search. Now, the first major clue emerged weeks later. Like, this was not a quick case. They first discovered a blue backpack near a riverbank, miles and miles from where Lizanne and Chris were last seen, but it was still a clue. Inside were phones, a camera, and a lot of personal items. After looking into it, it was clear this was their bag, and it was their belongings. Analysts discovered that the phones showed that these girls had tried to contact the authorities and had called the emergency services tons and tons of times but had no signal. And this is where it gets really messed up, so buckle in. There was a camera in the backpack, and this was how they knew it was the girls, because it contained over 100 photos of them. Most of them brilliant, but these were the last photos of the girls. As the investigators scrolled through the camera, it showed the girls walking along, taking photos of each other, as you normally would, and then it changed in an instant. So in the day, perfectly fine. Fast forward to 4 a.m, random, completely random photos of the scenery. Nothing of the girls, just almost blurry images. Strange photos of the sky or of scenic landscape. But then they scrolled a bit further. They discovered a photo where one of the girls was there and someone was holding her head with blood in her hair. But around 2 months later, they discovered something else, reportedly discovering a pelvis and a foot in the local area. And after looking at the DNA, it had matched to one of the girls. So there is a lot of theories, of course, about what actually happened here, but it is remarkably unexplainable, as you can imagine. The most common thing people say is that they got attacked by wildlife, or that there was someone else in that forest. But this is one of the most unexplainable cases to this day, and genuinely, what the hell happened?